It is great to be back. We have been on a crazy road trip for the last couple of weeks, and as most of you probably know, we are not from New Jersey, our family, and so for us to go and see family in the summer, which we like to do, we have to go on this kind of crazy road trip, and so we drove over 50 hours in a minivan with 4 kids, and people are like, "How's your vacation?" And I'm like, "It was a trip." Right? That's not vacation, it's just a trip. And so we drove from here, we left, and we drove 20 hours plus hours to Florida, and then over 10 hours to Arkansas, and then another 20 hours back to New Jersey. And see, we are not like some lazy people when they road trip, and they actually stop and spend the night. Like those are lazy, uncommitted people. We keep driving all night long. That's how we roll, all right? And so as a result of that, I am suffering from perhaps the world's greatest case of jet lag ever. I have no idea what time it is or where I am most of the time. I've been working in the middle of the night and sleeping during the day. Totally a mess. But we survived, and it was great. The kids did great. We've trained them really well for these long road trips. But that doesn't make it easy, right? I mean, I'll be honest. I'm not saying it was the easiest thing in the world. It is a hard journey, and about halfway through, I'll be real honest, you're sick of the car. Like there's something like physical at some point where you're like, I don't even want to get back in there. You know, it's like, no, and we'll tell our kids like, okay, it's time to keep going. Let's get back in the car. We're gonna drive on. And they're like, nah, I'm staying here. We're at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. Like we're gonna leave you. Yep, just leave. I don't want to get back in the car. We're gonna go see grandma. Don't care. Not happening. She's gonna have presents. Don't care. Not getting back in the car. And eventually you're just like, I don't care what you care about. You're getting back in the car, and you force them back in the car, and we're all tired. We're all exhausted. We're all frustrated. Everybody's yelling at each other. The kids are whining and complaining. I'm like, listen, I don't want to be in this van with you any more than you want to be in here with me, so get over it. And Carrie and I, at this point, we are questioning all of our life's decisions that have led to this point, and we're questioning ourselves, and we're questioning God. We're like, God, why are airline tickets so outrageously priced? Why haven't you invented teleportation yet? Like, why, God, why? So that was my last 2 weeks. How were yours? Now, we made some really fantastic memories. You in the moment, you feel all of the struggle, you feel all the hard, but then pretty quickly you look back and you go, wow, that was special. But how were your last 2 weeks? Man, I hope they were great. I hope they were fantastic. I hope the last few months of your life, I hope the last few years of your life have just been spectacular. Everything is just trending up and to the right. Everything is good for you. But I'm guessing that maybe you've had a moment or two where you've looked around and maybe it was something happened that turned your world upside down that you still haven't recovered from. Or maybe it was you get in a car with too many kids and driving for too far. I don't know what your life is like. Or maybe it was just getting punched in the face with something you didn't see coming. Or just some residual disappointment over and over and over again with something at work. But at some point, maybe there's a little voice that crept up inside of you that said, God, what gives? Like what is happening right now? God, why would you let this happen to me? Why is this what's going on? And see, that is certainly not a new question. That is a question that I've heard so many times over the course of my life. Why is God letting this happen to me? Why does God allow this bad thing? Why does God allow suffering? Like this is kind of an age-old question. It's kind of the human question in many ways. For centuries, for thousands of years, God, why do you allow this suffering in the world, but not just in the world, but in my world? And the reason we struggle with that question is because there's this juxtaposition that we are experiencing between what we know of God, that he is good, he's compassionate and loving, and what we experience in the world. And there's this cognitive dissonance of this is God, I thought he loved me, and yet this bad thing is happening. And if that cognitive dissonance gets loud enough, then eventually it can be very difficult to hear God at all. And it can get to the point for some where they stop listening to God, stop looking for God, and give up on God altogether. But of course, this isn't a new problem. It's not a new question. It's a question that's been asked for thousands and thousands of years. One of the most famous examples of this is found in the life of a man named Habakkuk. And Habakkuk was a prophet of God. He lived almost 3,000 years ago, so a long time ago, and he was a prophet of God in the nation of Judah. And Habakkuk wrestled with this question, God, where are you in the face of suffering? Where are you when everything is going wrong? What are you doing? But Habakkuk's story is one of a journey. It's a journey from questioning to faith. And I think it's a journey that we need to go on. It's a journey that a lot of us, we find ourselves somewhere on this trajectory. And so for the next few weeks, we're going to spend some time just looking at the book of Habakkuk and his writings and his interactions with God, his conversations with God, his wrestling with God, because I want us to be a people who move from questioning and doubt to a place of faith. And see, for Habakkuk, his problems were much bigger than a lot of our problems, all right? His problem was not getting stuck in a minivan with 4 kids for 50 hours. His problem was that he lived in a nation that was coming apart, a nation that was disintegrating from the inside out. This was the nation of Judah. Remember that there was the nation of Israel, the kingdom of Israel under King David. But then the kingdom had divided through rebellion so that there was a northern nation of Israel and then a southern nation of Judah. And so Habakkuk is in the nation of Judah. And during the reign of King Jehoiakim, who was a corrupt king. And so corruption, greed, and injustice had become rife, saturating their society, and so that the rich and the powerful were devouring the poor and the powerless. And so Habakkuk looked around and he felt that cognitive dissonance and says, God, you are good, you are loving, you are compassionate, so what gives? Like, explain to me, why is this happening? Why aren't you doing what seems like it would be the good and compassionate and loving thing to do? And so Habakkuk, starting at verse 1, he writes this: the oracle that Habakkuk the prophet received. The word oracle in the Hebrew has to do with a weight or a burden. This is something that has become just so weighty that he feels so deeply that now he simply has to put pen to paper. And I'm so glad he does, because it's now for our benefit. So verse 2, how long? This is Habakkuk's prayer to God. How long, O Lord, must I call for help? But you do not listen. Or cry out to you, violence, but you do not save. Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife and conflict abounds. Therefore the law is paralyzed and justice never prevails. The wicked him and the righteous, so that justice is perverted. And so Habakkuk, he's like, God, where are you? Like, he's calling God out. He's like, God, I'm seeing all of this and I'm waiting for you to show up. I'm doing my job. I'm calling for help. You're not doing your job. Where are you? Have you ever talked to God like that? I mean, have you ever really wrestled with God? Like, gone face to face, toe to toe. God, gloves are coming off. I want to go a round or two. You tell me. I'm looking at my life. I'm looking at the world. You tell me, where are you? Why is this happening? It's pretty bold, isn't it? Pretty bold. And for the people in Habakkuk's day, this was bold too, right? And I don't just mean the people of Israel. Like, in the ancient Near Eastern world, if you had gods and idols that you worshiped, like, you didn't talk to them like this. Like, that's a good way to get smoten, right? They're gonna smite you, right? Like you grovel. You go before them, hands and knees, nose to the ground. You're like, oh man, I'm just trying to make you happy, idol, God, whatever you are, so that you will do good things for me. I'm not going to call you like, no, I'm very happy with my life. Everything's great. I'm just hoping that maybe we get a little more rain, right? Right? That's how you approach a God. But that's not Habakkuk. This is bold. This is audacious. It's courageous. Maybe a little reckless. And maybe a little crazy. But can I tell you, I think that Habakkuk is actually showing us the right way to complain to God. For one, he is complaining to God, not about God. He is complaining to God about God, but he's not complaining to other people about God. Do you see the difference? See, he actually honors God and respects God enough to take his complaints about God to God. He takes it to the source, right? Have you ever had somebody go around behind your back and complain about you? And they're telling people all kinds of stuff about you, and they're criticizing you, letting know what a bad job you're doing, but then they never have the courage to come and tell you to your face. See, that's a disrespectful move. It's also a cowardly move. But here, Habakkuk, man, give the guy credit. He has the courage, but also the respect and the honor for God to say, I'm going to speak to you face to face. I'm going to bring my complaint about you. God, I'm not satisfied. I'm not happy with the job that you're doing. I don't understand what you're doing, but I'm bringing it to you. I'm not walking away. I'm not complaining to other people. I'm bringing it to you. But even then, there's a couple of different ways that we can confront people face to face, isn't there? Right, see, sometimes when we confront people face to face, there's sort of two approaches. One is that we can say, hey, this is the problem that I have, and I want to understand this. I want to dialogue. I want to confront you with it, but I'm waiting to hear your side of it. Like, I want to understand. And other times where we simply accuse them and walk away. That can be face to face as well. Right? If you're a parent, you've experienced this, right? There's those conversations where you have with your kids that can be really constructive. They can be tense. They can be emotional, but it's like, Mom, Dad, I don't like what you're doing. I don't like this decision. I'm unhappy about this. Okay, let's wrestle it out. Let's argue over it. We can discuss all of that. And then there's the kind of conversation where they walk in and they go, clearly you hate me. Right? You won't let me go to that party. You just ruined my life. You want to ruin my life. You wish that you never had me, right? I mean, you don't love me, right? That is a character assassination. Like at that point, they're not seeking to understand. They're not like, oh, I don't understand your decision. Like, help me understand it. They're like, no, you're a bad parent. See, I'm great with my kids having hard conversations. In fact, I love having hard conversations with my kids in all seriousness. I really do. Maybe not in that moment, but I don't want my kids to be automatrons just sort of doing whatever I tell them because I said. I want them to wrestle with the decisions that I make. I want them to wrestle and go, okay, but why? Help me understand. And not that I can always answer it fully for them. We can still engage in a way that actually builds and strengthens the relationship. But what I'm not okay with is when they question my character and my motive. And they go, oh, Dad, you just don't love me. That's ridiculous. See, now you're attacking my character. See, this is the difference. If you forget to invite someone to your birthday party, that the person who shows up and they have the courage at least to confront you to your face and they say, it really hurt my feelings that you didn't invite me to your party. Can you explain why? And then you talk through that versus the person who at best shows up and says, man, you're a jerk, I hate you, you forgot me, or you left me off and we're done, and they cancel you. Or even better, when they never say any of that, they just disappear, right? But see, Habakkuk, he isn't attacking God's character. He's actually appealing to God on the basis of his character. See, if you look closely, implicit in all of Habakkuk's questions is what he assumes to be true and what he knows to be true about who God is. See, the problem that Habakkuk has is not that God is evil. The problem is that cognitive dissonance, that he says, God, you are good and loving and compassionate, so why aren't you acting in ways that seem good and compassionate and loving? Right? He's not attacking God's character. He's appealing to God on the basis of his character. God, I know this is who you are. I know this is the kind of God that you are. So why aren't you acting in a way that seems to align with who you are? And God, incredibly, is good with us. Like, in fact, he seems to welcome the conversation. And remember that Habakkuk, he's not pulling his punches. He is brutally honest. He's not sugarcoating anything. He's not adding any disclaimers or softening his tone. He's like, God, I'm calling for help. You're not listening. You're not saving. You make me look at all the injustice and you don't do anything about it. God, this isn't who you are. But God seems to think that Habakkuk's honesty about his feelings, about what he's experiencing, about what he sees is better than pretending none of it's real. Better than stuffing his emotions, better than stuffing his thoughts, better than complaining to other people, or better than pretending that, you know what, it's no big deal. Corruption, injustice, all kinds of bad things. It doesn't really matter. We won't really worry about it. And one of the ways that many Christians historically have tried to cope with the evil and the suffering that they see in the world is to divide reality into two pieces, to divide it into the physical and the spiritual. And what they've done is try to say that God really just cares about the spiritual. There's the material and the immaterial world, the spiritual, the physical, the heaven and earth, if you will. And God doesn't really care about the earth. He doesn't really care about the physical or the material. He really just cares about the spiritual. And so, if everything is going bad in the world, I mean, it's terrible. We wish it wasn't that way, but it's not really that big of a deal because God doesn't really care about the world. He doesn't really care about the physical things. I mean, disease is bad, violence is bad, war is bad, all that's bad, but it's not a big deal because one day we are going to escape to heaven. And so it doesn't really matter what happens in this world. But see, Habakkuk doesn't see it that way. And the scriptures don't talk about it this way. What the scriptures tell us over and over again is that God created the world, that he loves the world, he loves everything that he's made, and that his ultimate plans for the world isn't to destroy the world, but actually to recreate it, to give it this amazing makeover so that it will literally become heaven on earth. And so Habakkuk is not looking for God to suck him out of the world. I'm going to get you out. Beam me up, Scotty. He is looking for God to set things right in the world. See, one of the essential differences between the hope of Christianity and what other religions teach about what comes after this life is that Christianity actually offers hope for you as a human being, who you are, the whole of you. So you are pretty amazing if you've ever thought about it. You have a will, you have a mind, you have an individuality, you have a personality, you are mind, body, soul, spirit. All of that is you, all of it. And without any one piece of it, you are no longer you, not fully. You're part of you, but you're not really fully you. And so the hope of Christianity is that you, all of you, body, mind, soul, and spirit, has a future hope. But with pretty much every other religion, every other faith, some part of you gets lost after this life. After this life, there's a number of different things that could happen, right? Depending on the religion or faith that you're following. I mean, maybe you get sucked up into some sort of like spiritual world and you become a spirit or a ghost or an angel. But that's not who you were created to be. You're never going to turn from here into a spirit or a ghost or an angel. You are made to be human. And then with other faiths, you lose your personality, you lose your individuality. You become absorbed into the universe perhaps or into the state of nirvana so that you have no personality, have no individual will, like you just sort of cease to exist. But the reality is that you, who you are, you have a will, you have a mind, you are an individual, you have a personality. You have a body. You are who God created you to be. And so God's plan for you and the hope that he has for you is not that he would strip some part of your humanity away, but that he would perfect your humanity. He would make you all finally, fully who you were created to be. See, this is why Habakkuk cares about the state of the world. That's why he wants God to set things right. Because without a world to live in where there is justice and peace and righteousness and equality, then there can be no human flourishing, not the way that God intends for it to be. And so Habakkuk looks at the world and says, we need a better world. God, we need to set this right. This is not a place where people can flourish as human beings. There is injustice and corruption and greed and all of this violence that's going on and cruelty that's going on. So God, I'm looking to you and I'm asking you to resolve this cognitive dissonance. I know that you are a good and compassionate and loving God, so please act in a way that is good and compassionate and loving. Put an end to all of this. Like, God, why haven't you done this? And so God, he gives him an answer. It's just not the answer that Habakkuk wants. So this is God responding to Habakkuk. Habakkuk, you want me to solve the problems of your society, of your land? Here we go. Look at the nations and watch and be utterly amazed. For I am going to do something in your days that you would not believe even if you were told. That sounds like a very promising start, doesn't it? Like at this point, it sounds like Christmas. It's like, oh boy, you would not believe what I'm about to do for you. Oh God, tell us, what are you going to do? I'm raising up the Babylonians, that ruthless and impetuous people who sweep across the whole earth to seize dwelling places not their own. They are a feared and dreaded people. They are a law to themselves and promote their own honor. Their horses are swifter than leopards, fiercer than wolves at dusk. Their cavalry gallops headlong. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like a vulture swooping to devour. They all come bent on violence. Their hordes advance like a desert wind and gather prisoners like sand. They deride kings and scoff at rulers. They laugh at all fortified cities. They build earthen ramps and capture them. Then they sweep past like the wind and go on. Guilty men whose own strength is their God. God says, don't look to heaven, right? Look at the nations. Look around you and look where I'm going to bring the solution to your problem. It's the Babylonians. See how they're running rampant in the nations around you? They're devouring, they're destroying, there's violence and cruelty. But guess what? Wherever they run through, that government, it no longer exists. So it can't be cruel or evil anymore because they've just wiped them out. She says, no problem. You don't like the evil and the corruption of your society, of your nation. I'm going to bring the Babylonians. They're going to take care of all of it. Have you ever asked a question that you wish you could take back? This is that moment for Habakkuk. He's like, man, I wish I could just reel that back in. Wait, well, hold on, God. I mean, you can just see Habakkuk's mind reeling. I mean, he's so lost. God, I'm asking you to make things better, and your idea of making things better is actually to make things worse. This is not what I was asking for. Like, I don't know exactly what Habakkuk had in mind that God would do, but I promise you this was not it. God seems to be doing the exact opposite of what Habakkuk is looking for. And Habakkuk, he's completely confused. He's like, the whole point was to rid society of evil, but God, your solution is to add to it. And so again, he turns to God and says, God, what are you thinking? I mean, surely you can't be serious. Verse 12, oh Lord, are you not from everlasting? My God, my Holy One, we will not die. Oh Lord, you have appointed them to execute judgment. Oh Rock, you have ordained them to punish. And so there's two things that are happening even in this one verse. And the first part is that he is struggling again with this cognitive dissonance. God, are you not from everlasting? Are you not the one who created us? Are you not the one who's been moving in our history all along? And yet you are going to bring the Babylonians to destroy us. But right in the middle of this, he says this amazing statement. He says, we will not die. And in that simple statement, he is declaring his confidence in the character of God. God, are you not from everlasting? I don't understand what's happening. They're going to bring judgment and punishment. But whatever happens, I know this. We will not die. My God, my Holy One, we will not die. I don't know how bad it's going to get. I can't imagine what the Babylonians will do to us. I can't imagine what this is going to do to our society. I can't imagine what we're about to go through, but we will not die. And he continues to appeal to God's character. Verse 13, your eyes are too pure to look on evil. You cannot tolerate wrong. See, he's back to this cognitive dissonance. I don't understand. God, you're too pure to look on evil. You cannot tolerate wrong. So what are you doing? Like, what are you thinking? Why then do you tolerate the treacherous? Why are you silent while the wicked swallow up those more righteous than themselves? You've made men like fish in the sea, like sea creatures that have no ruler. The wicked foe pulls all of them up with hooks. He catches them in his net. He gathers them up in his dragnet. And so he rejoices and is glad. Therefore, he sacrifices to his net and burns incense to his dragnet, for by his net he lives in luxury and enjoys the choicest food. Is he to keep on emptying his net, destroying nations without mercy? See, his whole question to God is like, look, you're bringing the Babylonians, and he's using this sort of imagery of the Babylonians are going fishing for nations, and they're just reeling them in, and then they're devouring them, and then they worship their violence. They worship their strength. They worship their power. Like, we could just have whatever we want. We walk in and we take it, and nothing can stand before us, and then they worship their strength and power. And Habakkuk says, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this, God. Like, why would you allow this? And then he closes with this amazing statement, verse 1 of chapter 2, I will stand at my watch and station myself on the ramparts. I will look to see what he will say to me and what answer I am to give to this complaint. Habakkuk says, God, you can't be serious. The Babylonians, they're worse than we are. But he says, okay, I'm going to wait. I'm going to listen and see what God has to say. And next week, we'll look at his response. Well, one of the most common reasons that I hear from people about why they can't believe in God is because there is evil in the world. It's sort of a classic question, if you will, or objection that you cannot have a good and compassionate, loving God and then have evil in the world. And as the reasoning goes, if such a God existed, then there would be no suffering. There would be no evil. There would be no genocide. There would be no child abuse. There would be no corruption. There would be no violence. There would be no wars. But there are, and so God doesn't exist. And this is a question that I've wrestled with in my own life at times. And oftentimes it's much more personal than just what's going on in there. It's really where it comes home to you. And you go, God, I don't understand how you can be good, and then I'm experiencing this kind of evil, especially evil that other people have committed against you. But one of the things I always try to point out to folks when I'm having this conversation is that the very existence of evil, if you think about it, actually is proof and evidence of the existence of God. Because you cannot have objective morality. You cannot, the very fact that we are aware, there's something inside of us that knows that right is right. You know, that some things are just wrong. Some things are just evil. And there's no debate, and it doesn't matter what anybody else would ever tell us. We know that is wrong. The very fact that we are aware of this existence of evil, that there is evil in the world, is actually proof that God exists. Because you cannot have objective morality in a universe without design. You cannot have objective right and wrong in a universe without design. If there is design, then there has to be a designer. I have a friend who is a game designer, not video game designer. He's a board game designer. Super creative, very inventive. If you'd like to know what games, you can talk to me later. I'll give you a link. You can buy some of his games. Really cool. And but when he designs games, you know, it's not just a matter of thinking of what kind of game and just putting some pieces on a board. Like, there's a whole narrative that you create. And so it's almost like world building. And so there's design, and there's characters, and there's a story, there's a plot, there's a narrative of how you're going to, you know, accomplish this or get this goal or whatever is going to be entailed in this game. But part of it, for it to work, is that he has to create rules. You have to know what the boundaries are. You have to know what you're allowed to do when in order to make the game work. Now, if you were to open it up and never read the rules and say, let's just go for it, it could be fun for a little while, but probably pretty unsatisfying. And let's be honest, there are some of us, we're pretty competitive, and so if we just were all making up our own rules along the way, this would not end well, right? I mean, we just end up fighting. But see, the rules exist because the designer put them into the game. If I'm sitting across from you and say, no, I don't think you should be allowed to do that, they go, says who? Like we're both just playing the game. You can't tell me I can't do that. Like, I have to appeal to the instruction manual. Right? I've got to appeal to the rules that come from on high, the designer, and say, yeah, but it says that you're not allowed to make that move. And see, you can try to argue against God's existence on the basis of evil, but understand you're actually cutting the legs out from your own argument, because you cannot have objective reality in an arbitrary universe. You cannot say objectively that murder is wrong if there is no one who has woven into the very fabric of the universe the sanctity of life, the need to preserve life. Otherwise, if you say murder is wrong, someone else says, no, it's not. And who are you to say? Well, I think that we should live for human flourishing. Says who? Well, I think it's better that people live and not die. Says who? I mean, you can find people, maybe you've seen them, but there are people who are making arguments that the world is overpopulated. What we really need is a good pandemic to wipe out a lot of people. That would be better for the earth. It'd be better for the world. It'd be better for all of the nature and animals. Because who's to say that a human life is any more valuable than an ant's? You can say, oh no, I know that's not true. Says who? See, you cannot extract objective morality from a universe without design. There has to be a designer who says this is right and this is wrong. See, Habakkuk, he is not wrestling with the existence of God, all right, just to be clear. What Habakkuk is actually wrestling with is the fact that God is too gracious and too loving and that he has given people too much freedom. See, I think the real issue that we often have with what God allows in the world actually comes down to freedom, that we wish that God would limit the freedom of other people because they are messing everything up. Right? And so we don't want God to allow people to have the freedom to choose right and wrong. Because the freedom that God has given to us as free moral agents is something that we can abuse. We can use it to commit crimes. We can use it to cheat, to lie, to slander, to perform violent acts, right? To do all of these things. And so Habakkuk, his wrestling with God, he's not wrestling with God like, God, there's evil, so do you exist? He knows God exists. In fact, it's the very existence of evil that is driving him to embrace and to hold on to the solution that is found in the very character of God, that God is good and God has created the world for good. What Habakkuk is wrestling with is that God is overly indulgent to the freedom that he has given to humanity. You see, without freedom, without free will, without free human moral agency, then there can be no full expression of love. You can't have love without the freedom to also choose to hate. You cannot have love without the freedom to say, I don't love you. And so God, even though we wish that he wouldn't at times, he refuses to limit the freedom of our will in order to allow us to retain the ability to love the way that we've been created and designed to love. But understand it's the same freedom. The freedom to hate is the same freedom that he gives us to love. The same freedom that we can use and abuse is the same freedom that we can use to embrace. And so God says, oh, I'm going to preserve your freedom, when Habakkuk says, this is not what I wanted. You need to stop letting other people ruin everything. I try to give my kids as much freedom as possible. Some would probably say I give them too much freedom. They would not say that. They would say I definitely don't give them enough freedom. But Carrie and I really want our kids to have the freedom to make decisions for themselves, because that's how you learn. It's how you grow. It's how you mature. We want them to have the freedom to fail and even to an extent make bad decisions, because we want them to learn from those decisions. And I would much rather them do that while they're living at home and sort of under our protection as much as possible than later on in life. So this is the time, right? So we try to give them as much freedom as possible, but it doesn't always turn out well. I mean, they abuse the freedom. There are times when they make really bad decisions. And what's really funny is that then sometimes they'll actually blame me. Like I remember, I think my daughter, she was like really little and she had this toy and she was playing with it like really rough. And I was like, you know what? You shouldn't do that. And then it broke exactly the way that I thought it would. And she was like, it broke. And I said, yeah, I told you not to do that. And she goes, why did you let me? See, it's my fault, But see, this is what we do to God. We make bad choices. We do the wrong thing. All the things that he's been telling us all along, do not do those things. We do them anyway, and then we hold him responsible and we blame him. And then we accuse him, we come at him, because then he's not solving the problems that we've created. He's not solving the problems that we have perpetrated on our own. He's not doing it in the time and in the way that we want him to do it. See, Habakkuk, he is not okay with God's solution. He doesn't like the Babylonian solution. But can I tell you, I think the reason that God uses the Babylonians here, and this is just a theory, but I think it's because this is about the only option he had. I mean, if you think about it, the very people that God wanted to use to clean up evil and corruption and injustice in the world, that was the Israelites. That was the people that he'd chosen. Guess who is a mess? Like he's going, wait, you were my chosen people. I wanted you to be the light in the darkness in this region. I wanted you to invite people into a relationship with me and for you to show people what it is to live in relationship with me with justice and peace and harmony. And you're such a mess. You cannot be who I've called you to be. And so I'm looking around, and where am I going to turn? Well, here's the Babylonians. They're going to come in, and they're going to make things right in a very, very different sort of way. And see, what God is showing Habakkuk and what he's showing us is that God takes evil and sin so much more seriously than we do. He is showing us that he will stop at nothing. Like drastic measures, he's willing to do anything to eradicate and to pull and to purge evil from the lives of those people that he loves. Like there is no link that he will not go to. And the reason that we struggle with understanding that is because we do not understand the severity of the problem the way that he does. And if you do not understand the severity of heart disease, like if you see somebody lying on a table and there's a guy with a scalpel cutting him open, then it just looks like he's trying to kill him. But if you understand the severity of the disease, then you understand that in that moment, the surgeon is doing the only thing possible to save that person's life. And see, this is why Habakkuk says, be utterly amazed. You are never going to believe what I'm about to do, even if it had been told to you, because it is so radical. It is so outside of everything that anyone would expect, that he would use the Babylonians of all people to eradicate the evil in the land. But this is what it took, because that's how serious the evil and the sin is. But can I tell you that the evil that we see in the world, and so much of the suffering that we see in the world, it really is simply a symptom of what is inside of each of us. And the evil that exists out there, it didn't spring out of nowhere. It actually comes from a deep brokenness within each of us. There is something that has gone seriously wrong in the human heart. That we take the freedom that God has given to us and we use it to hurt and to abuse and to injure and to kill one another. And see, that disease of sin, that brokenness is something that no government and no human enterprise, no military power could ever eradicate. And so once again, knowing that God said later, be amazed, I'm going to do something so utterly incredible that you could never have imagined it, even if you've been told. And God himself stepped into human history. He became one of us. Nobody saw that coming. God himself said, I'm going to come and I'm going to die. I'm willing to go to lengths you can't even imagine. Jesus said, I'm willing to come. I'm going to give up heaven itself, give up all that I have, and I'm going to come and become one of you, die for you, to save the world from its sin, to save your soul. I am coming to save all of you. I am coming to make all things right. Jesus is the solution that we never saw coming. And because he did, like Habakkuk, we can say, we will not die. Like Habakkuk, we can say, we will not die. Whatever happens in our lives, whatever's going on in the world, however crazy things get, we can have confidence in the character of God and what he has already done in Jesus to say, we will not die. We have a hope, we have life, we have a future. We will not die because God so loved the world. He was unwilling to give up on us, no matter what. I don't know what your week has been like. I don't know what the last few years of your life have been like. And maybe you've come to a point where you're questioning the goodness of God or maybe even God's existence. And I'm not here to tell you exactly what God is doing in your life. I can't explain all the hard things that you've experienced. I can't tell you with intricate detail and explain the rationale behind the mind of God. Like I'm not God, but what I can tell you is that a much better way isn't to trust in your understanding. Don't put your confidence in your security and your trust in your understanding. Put it in the character of God who loves you. And if you need proof, just look at the cross. If you don't know Jesus like that, if you are unsure of the character of God, I want you to know that Jesus, over 2,000 years ago, he became one of us. It was so unexpected. The idea that the God who created all of the universe, who created all of us, who owed us nothing, that he was willing to come and to step into our space. And he came because he loved you. And he gave his life for you so that you could be healed of all of your regrets, all of your shame, all of your brokenness, everything that you don't want anyone else to know. He took all of it on himself to make you whole, to save you, and to give you a future, an eternal future with him. And if you're at a place in your life where you realize that you're out of solutions, you've tried putting your confidence in the government or a politician or an education or success or money or whatever it is, you've said, this is my confidence, this is my security, and you finally come to a place and realize that it will not solve your life. Jesus is the solution you're looking for. Totally unexpected, but he is the one. And if you are ready to take that step of faith, you can enter into a relationship with him this morning. I just want to lead you in a brief prayer. If you all just bow your heads with me for a moment and close your eyes. And if that's you this morning, you just realize that Jesus is the solution you're looking for. That he died for you so that you could have forgiveness for your sins and the hope of eternal life. And you have never taken the step of faith. Right now, you can just pray with me, Jesus, I give you my life. Jesus, I know that you love me. I don't understand all that's going on in my life. I don't understand everything that, God, you're doing, but Jesus, I believe in you. And I give my life to you. And if that's you, I want you to know that you have just stepped into a new relationship with Jesus. And that's not the end, that's actually just the beginning. I hope you'll come talk to us. We want to walk in this journey with you. Father, as we go from this place, we just ask that you would lead us, that you would, Lord, that you would show us and remind us that our security and our trust isn't found in our ability to understand all that you do. We cannot comprehend your mind. You are beyond us. But there is absolute trust and security and peace that comes when we trust in your character and what you've already done and what we see in Jesus. So it's in his name that we pray. Amen.